What's up guys, Phoenix here, and today's video is going to be another Deck Doctor video, and this time it is going to be on the Harpie deck list that was sent in to me by Karen Jensen. This is also the same deck list that I played in my last DEVpro duel video that went on my channel a day or so ago. Now, if you have your own deck list that's a TCG legal deck and it's something I haven't done before or I haven't done in a long time, so I could apply new format concepts and new card pool options into it, then send it to my Facebook fan page. Link is in the description to my Facebook fan page, and if it's something that I can do, like I said, if I haven't done it before or I haven't done it in a long time, and it's a TCG legal deck that I can work around with, I would have no problems potentially doing that for a video for you guys, just to help the spread of information and like stuff like that, just general-ish. But anyway, let's get on to this Harpie deck. There are definitely some changes I want to make to it. I definitely want to address some problems that I had with it, testing it on camera and off camera, and all that stuff like that. Now, Harpies I really like as a deck, simply because the engine is very versatile and it's very methodical, I guess is the word I can use. It does its thing and it does it well. While it does it slow, it does it consistently, and it's very good at consistently applying like little bits of pressure over and over again. And if you're able to hide behind defensive cards, that's very good, and that like gives you actually like potential to actually play this deck. Even though it is a tier 2, tier 3 deck, it's arguably one of the better options, specifically because of the like availability of options you have to you in the form of like Harpie's Hunting Ground, allowing you to play through multiple back row, like all of these cards being like very good in like card economy quality, and like that they all like are capable of like replacing themselves, continuing your play string rolling, and it has access to some of like the best defensive cards in the game in the form of like Icarus Attack to clear boards and stuff like that. It's also just a very good deck at making rank 4s. His rank 4 engine is like very, very good in the current format. While slow, it is very good, and like I said, and that's for card economy reasons. If card economy was the sole like driving force of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh at this current point in time, and it didn't have anything to do with tempo or speed, then this deck would definitely be one of the top contenders. And that is something that I really always liked about this deck. But anyway, other than that, enough blathering, whatever word I was trying to say there. But anyway, I've taken all the side deck cards out that you saw from the last video, so that I could take everything out of the main deck and extra deck in one fell swoop before anything starts getting put back in. Now, the monster lineup is completely solid. Nothing is changing here other than the addition of another Summoner Monk. Now, that is the only thing that is changing, because Summoner Monk is actually just an amazing card. It facilitates more rank 4s. It triggers your Hysteric Signs if you draw them. Gets you into your channelers more consistently, gets you into dancers. It literally gets you into all of these cards if you need them. And it's also just, like I said, just another good starter card. It gets you out of the early game. But in terms of spell cards, there are quite a few that are going to get cut. Divine Wind of the Mist Valley is going to get cut. 1 Elegant Egotist is getting cut. The 3 Phalanx Pikes are getting cut. The Book of Moon is getting cut. And the Quillpen of Goldos is getting cut. Now, I'll explain all of these. Divine Wind of Mist Valley, we don't have Chicken Game anymore, so it would be cool if you could splash a little engine, like with Chicken Game, Terraforming, and this, and access to Hunting Ground and stuff like that. That would be really neat, but as it stands, this card is an inaccessible -1 that's only really decent if you pair it with Dancer. Now, you do have a lot of accessibility into Dancer because of Summoner Monk, Hysteric Sign, and Harpie Channeler. I understand this. This is easily the most accessible card out of what you're trying to do. But Divine Wind of the Mist Valley, like, it doesn't really do anything to like extend your game plan that much in order to warrant the -1 you take by activating it. So it doesn't really seem worth to me. I mean, if you want to keep playing it, you could just swap a 3rd Hunting Ground for it, but Hunting Ground just has infinitely more value because the attack boost is relevant, and also the back row popping is also relevant against literally like every deck in the format right now. Against Cosmo, you get to pop strikes. Against every deck, you get to pop strikes. Against Cosmo, you get to pop whatever back row they have, like force Cosmojos out. Against Monarchs, you get to pop Dominion. You get to do all this nonsense. Against like Burning Abyss variants, against Phantom Knight variants, you get to pop their Fog Blades, all this stuff. Like, this card is incredible right now. In terms of like, it's always been really good, and it's always been one of the go-to reasons of why you would play the Harpie deck. But something I forgot to mention was that I'm going to be doing this Deck Doctor in a slightly budget sense. Now, I'm not going to be putting Solemn Strikes in this list. Now, if you're going to play this deck at any sort of competitive event and you have access to Solemn Strikes in any way, shape, or form, I would heavily advocate using Solemn Strike because the card's amazing. But I'm going to be omitting that from this deck list, from this Deck Doctor. I will tell you what cards would be swapped. It's going to be pretty obvious what cards could be swapped for Strike, but I will tell you anyway. But still, I'm going to be building it as if budget is what you're looking at, because, I mean, if you're trying to play a Harpie deck list, I don't expect you to be trying to take it to an event, but even if you are, I would advocate the use of strikes, but I'm going to be building this as if you are just trying to just have fun on a budget and have something that's solid, essentially, but still capable of playing against meta decks, potentially. So, yeah. But anyway, back to the reasonings. 3 Phalanx Pike, this actually is, strangely enough, a solid side deck card. Like, I would actually see myself, if I played Harpies, possibly siding this card for playing against decks like the Power Ranger deck, the Super Quant deck with Great Magnus, because this is potentially an out to that, as well as the Raid Raptor deck, because that deck gets Ultimate Falcon and Shining Victories, and this is an out to that as well, because the Harpie deck can potentially struggle with that, because the only like feasible out that you'd have to it is cards like Utopia the Lightning, but Phalanx Pike gives you a main deck out, even though it is a -1 equip spell. Arguably, Moon Mirror Shield would probably just be just as good, if not better. But this card is pretty much the definition of win more, and that's why it's being taken out of the main deck. It's neat, it's cool, I get it, but I definitely wouldn't main deck it, and you could potentially side it for those decks, like I said, for the Power Ranger deck and the Raid Raptor deck, because those have Towers equivalents that are unaffected by card effects, and that could be a problematic matchup for this deck specifically, because the outs are incredibly few and far between to those sorts of cards for this kind of just generic rank 4 deck. So, like this or Moon Mirror Shield, I could definitely see being sided. Book of Moon, it doesn't really have a lot of value in the current format. That's basically just it. It's probably one of the worst defensive cards right now. It only really has value against BA variants, but even then, if you were going to side this card, you'd be better off siding hand traps like Max C and Flying C. So there's that. And then Cool Pin of Goldos. This card, its bounce effect isn't really relevant, but its recycle effect is kind of the main reason I see it being played in this list, because you can recycle things like Emerald and stuff, and you do run through monsters relatively quickly through a couple of turns if you're able to consistently wall up with defensive cards and keep pushing out rank 4s, doing what the deck is meant to do. You can run out of cards, you can run out of monsters, and this can potentially put back your Daigusto Emerald if you use it to recycle things, stuff like that. But in terms of a recycling card, it's not really the greatest, and there's just better options available, so that's why it's getting cut. It's getting cut for a better recycling option. The bouncing effect is hardly ever actually relevant. It would be more relevant if this was a trap and you could use the bouncing effect as a defensive card, but as it stands, you literally have to already be staring down the threat, and usually the threat is something that's either non-targetable, it doesn't matter if you bounce it, or it's just a few other, there's just multiple factors that make this card not really the greatest, and if you're playing it strictly to recycle cards, there are better options. But from the trap lineup, 2 Magical Hats are coming out, because this card is absolutely garbage in the current format, because of the fact that, while yes, you can use it to trigger Hysteric Sign, hardly ever are you going to be dealing in cases where your opponent is attacking you, and they haven't dealt with your monsters, or they haven't dealt with your back row. It's being a battle trap is terrible. If it was chainable and it just lasted until the end of the battle phase, if you could play this in main phase 1 and use it to blink monsters out of being targeted for effects and nonsense, that would be really cool, and the card would be really worth playing then. But as it stands, it being a battle tactic and one of the worst battle tactics is what makes it just really not worth. There's just really so many better options that you could play. So that's all the cards that are being taken out of the main deck. It's 8 cards and, well, actually, 9. 9 numbers. But we already added the Summoner Monk, and what we are going to just add is we're going to add 2 more enablers of rank 4s, which are instant fusions. This deck is one of the unique cases in that it gets a lot of value out of instant fusion, and it only shares this capability with other decks like Mermail and Heroes, where in that Mermail and Heroes can play instant fusion and get back either Dragoons or Shadow Mist off Norden, make a rank 4, and then potentially get a search off of those cards. This deck has that same interaction with Harpie Harpist. Although it is an in-phase search, it is still a search and gives you more value off instant fusion. So there is that as potential just making this card more worth is what I'm trying to say. And the fact that this deck wheels and deals in making rank 4s to apply pressure, being able to make quick economical rank 4s in the form of 1 card rank 4s that instant fusion provides is definitely just why it's worth playing in this deck. If you have a reason to play Soul Charge, you definitely have a reason to play instant fusion. That's basically it. Egotist, I should probably explain why this went down to 2. It's searchable and recurable off of Steric Sign, and it's not really the best card in terms of facilitating rank 4s. Summoner Monk is just better at that, so it's kind of like, I just looked at it as a 1-for-1 swap, like taking out the 3rd Egotist and putting in the 2nd Summoner Monk, because it's just like, Summoner Monk actually can generate a rank 4 by itself with a spell, whereas the Egotist by itself with another spell would not be able to, so it's better for ratio-wise, as well as the fact that, like I said, it's searchable and recurable off of Steric Sign, so anytime you need to access it, you should feasibly be able to get to it reasonably, because you have 5 copies of it in your deck, which is definitely like significant. It's definitely a real number. That's definitely a significant number, but it's not the best card in terms of facilitating rank 4s. Summoner Monk and Instant Fusion are just better at that, and so like these, it's kind of taking a backseat to that, but it is still there as a viability option, because it is still something that actually does come up, and it is still a decent card for the deck because of like how you can stack up Harpie's Hunting Ground, Pops, and stuff like that, and make more rank 4s. But I digress. That's the entire spell lineup that's going to be there. The rest of this deck is going to be 12 traps, and a few of them are going to be defensive cards, but most importantly, we're going to put in the cards that would have been Solemn Strikes. These 3 cards that are going in would have been Solemn Strikes if you wanted to play the deck with Strike, but otherwise, if you're trying to be on a budget, then you would do it this way, and that is with a Traptrix Traphole Nightmare, a Bottomless, and a Vanity's Emptiness. Now, why Bottomless and Traptrix Traphole Nightmare is because with these cards, you can actually just put Rafflesia in the extra deck, and that allows you to have essentially a form of, summonable effect negation in the form of Traptrix Traphole Nightmare, which essentially is trying to alleviate some of the strain that Strike was doing, and then Bottomless, clearing like Pendulum summons of like massive amounts, clearing away big ships that get summoned, stuff like that. It's basically, they're literally trying to hold hands and do what Strike does, but just nowhere near as well. And the fact that it's an extra deck monster that you can, use is another reason that's like makes it pretty decent, in my opinion, in the form of like you can make Rafflesia, and that gives you a way to summon defensive cards. I've always been a huge fan of that in any deck, is the ability to summon defensive cards. But otherwise, I mean, pretty alright, I assume. But next card is Storming Mirror Force. Now, regular Mirror Force, Blazing Mirror Force, and the new to come out in Shining Victories, Rippling Mirror Force. And I literally looked at all the Mirror Forces because I wanted a battle tactic that was better than Magical Hats and actually like allowed yourself to have a good defensive card against boards of attacking things. And Storming Mirror Force and Quaking Mirror Force just turned out to be like the best ones because like Blasting Mirror Force, those trigger Cosmo ships and other floaters and stuff like that. And so those are obviously out. And then Rippling Mirror Force, you have to be getting attacked directly, and while it is arguably the best one in terms of what it does with the monsters, you have to be getting attacked directly, so it's already defeated part of the purpose of why you're playing these cards, is that you're trying to protect your boards, potentially. But it could still be worth, depending on how like matchups fare. But honestly, the only ones that were really worth were Quaking and Storming, and I felt like Storming just had a little bit more viability in the current format. Because yes, it does put the cards back in their hand, but that puts them off the board, and if they can't reestablish them onto the board that turn, that gives you turns to reposition yourself in the game and keep applying your pressure with your generic rank 4s and rank 7 plays that Channeler and Monk and like Egotist and Instant Fusion all provide, and thus allowing you to do things. Like, honestly, you could play Quaking in place of it. I specifically feel like Storming is better, simply because Quaking doesn't actually deal with the threats. It just puts them face down, and that's actually relevant in like the matchups like Cosmo and stuff like that, where like these ships still exist. These Dark Destroyers that you have to attack over while in face down defense position are still there, and they can still float, and that's a problem. Whereas with Storming Mirror Force, it potentially alleviates the pressure for a turn, and sometimes that's all you need just to be able to wall behind other defensive cards, do other things with your rank 4 pool that you have access to, stuff like that. So I mean, that's the only thing that that is kind of dictating that. I couldn't think of a better defensive card to put in here that's just generic and does the job that I'm trying to get this kind of stuff to do, which is just blanket protection. I couldn't think of a better one. But last card that's going into the deck is that recursion card, that recyclability card, that one that we took out Coilpin of Goldos for, Jar of Avarice. I've always loved this card ever since it was printed, and I've always tried to fit it in anything that I could feasibly fit it into and get away with it, and this is one of those decks. This card is just infinitely better than Quillpin of Goldos because instead of trying to take away a resource from your opponent while they've already plussed into those resources, you literally just give yourself more resources. This shuffles back way more than just what Quillpin of Goldos does in terms of 2 wins. You can shuffle back your monks, you can shuffle back your instant fusions, you can shuffle back your soul charge, you can shuffle back your defensive cards, potentially draw into more of them, all that kind of stuff. If the format was ever like really, really slow, I feel like Jar of Avarice could be a potentially like really, really good and meta-defining card, like potentially. Who knows? But like the format would have to slow down a lot. But this is one of those decks that's, again, very passive and very defensive. And in the same essence that Quillpin of Goldos is like just like a really slow and kind of just like card because it doesn't really deal with anything. Like at the same time, Jar of Avarice is inherently slow because it's a trap, yes. But the fact that it gives you a card, it pluses you, and it's chainable, so like you can potentially have removal baited on this card because you're playing a bunch of defensive cards. Your opponent's gonna be trying to out those. Like, and the potential, like it gives you an extra card, resets your resource pool. It resets a lot more than Quillpin of Goldos does, and it just sets you up to play the game better than I feel like the one Quillpin of Goldos would. If you were playing just a one of, then I definitely feel like Jar of Avarice is the superior card. Now, I've spent a long time talking about this and doing ratios and like explaining main deck options. So we're going to jump in to this extra deck. Now, obviously, like I already said, these 3 cards right here are what I would replace for Solemn Strikes if you have access to them. But if not, if you want to play on like the budget option, play these 3. Seems to be the legitimate option. Now, for the extra deck, Flare Metal Dragon is getting cut simply because like rank 7s don't come up that often with one pet dragon in the build, but you do have the potential to make multiple rank 7s. Flare Metal is just the worst option simply because it's not really doing anything. Like you literally want all of your rank 4s to either take away or give you cards, and like Flare Metal does neither of those. And while it does potentially soft lock your opponent out of the game, the issue is that most of the time any other of these, like between Dracossack or Big Eye, would just be better because you could either take something that's huge or do all that other sort of nonsense. Like you could. Like, potentially, Flare Metal would come up, but, like, I see it coming up, like, very few games out of, like, 100. And, like, that's, like, an issue. You don't want to be... This extra deck is actually relatively tight. So you actually just don't want to be playing cards like that, essentially. Castel is also getting the axe, simply because the only time you're ever going to make Castel instead of making Lightning Chidori is when you're using Summoner Monk and just going raw dogging into a straight rank 4, or you're instant fusioning Norden into a straight rank 4. Otherwise, if you're actually using your engine for what it's supposed to be doing, you're going to be summoning Lightning Chidori literally every time, and Lightning Chidori is just infinitely better than Castel because it bounces up to 2 more cards. It bounces a set card when it enters the board. It bounces a face up to top of deck. While Castel does shuffle it away, Chidori actually can potentially set your opponent behind turns. Like, that's actually, like, real. Chidori is just infinitely better. I just don't see Castel being really worth when you have access to these cards, is the issue that I have there. Now, Dark Rebellion doesn't really come up that often, specifically when you factor in what I'm about to replace Dark Rebellion and Ragna Zero with, simply because Ragna doesn't really come up at all, like, literally at all in this format. There's not really any, like, sort of attack mods that are really being, like, metagame, other than, like, the Phantom Knight stuff, but the Phantom Knight stuff is also, like, some of them are, like 2 of the 3 cards that boost attack in the Phantom Knight deck are literally, like, destruction preventers, so Ragna Zero has no value there either. But instead, they're going to be replaced with Utopia and Utopia Lightning to give you a rank 4 option to out Cosmo big ships, as well as out potential things in the future, like the Power Ranger deck making Great Magnus, and the Raid Raptor deck making Ultimate Falcon. So, like, that's why these are going here, and they take up 2 spots. Yeah, it sucks, but, I mean, damn, gotta deal with it. But otherwise, other cards going into the extra deck are the Norden to support the instant fusions. The Dweller is definitely fine. It's a great card. It definitely should likely stay. The only other card that's actually just kind of doesn't really need to be here is the second Phantasmal Dragon. Now, I know you can make an argument for why 2 is good. Like, it's definitely good in board states where, like, you literally just have to cheese your way to the win. And this is definitely what this card does. And this card's definitely good against, like, BA and, like, against the Cosmo matchup because they can't Dart Destroyer it, they can't attack over you, they can't do anything when this is on the board. But the issue is that if you make this card and you're unopposed with it, 1 should be enough anyway. on the rare occasion that they are at 8,000 when you summon this card, like, you'll still get 3 direct attacks in with it, and, like, you can potentially be doing other options to kill them, 1, or 2, you can recycle it with Emerald and stuff like that. The extra deck's just too tight right now to warrant playing the second copy of it, basically. That's the only real issue. Now, if you want to access Solemn Strikes, then you are not playing Rafflesia in the extra deck. Now, in which case, you can either replace the Rafflesia with a Giant Hand to be another defensive card, or you can replace it with another Phantasmal Dragon, essentially. But otherwise, it's kind of hit or miss. Like, the chances of you making 2 in the course of a game and, like, needing both of them back to back are very, very rare. But other rank 4 is going to be Queen Dragon Djinn. This actually serves as, like, more protection for, like, Phantasmal Dragon, as well as it reborns Harpie's pet dragon, thus making you have plays where you're actually able to make another rank 7 in a game on a pinpoint moment's notice if you are capable of accessing Queen Dragon Djinn. And it's just, that's basically all there is for it. Just being able to reborn Harpie's pet dragon and combine it with, like, a Monk Channeler play or something like that is just really, actually just huge. Like, it's actually just huge for tempo swings and stuff like that, and that's why it is worth the slot. But last slot in the extra deck is the only card I've mentioned probably 4 different times in this video, Traptrix Rafflesia. Like I said, if you're not playing these and you're playing the strikes instead, definitely cut this for either the second Phantasmal Dragon, Castel, or a Giant Hand. Giant Hand would probably be the best option just because it's another defensive rank 4. But otherwise, this is the list that I would be happy to play with, and I will be playing with in another video. And this Deck Doctor has been long, but these things are historically long because I like to explain things. But still, like, this one, like, for some reason feels a lot longer than the other ones were. I don't know, but yeah, everything else is just kind of has its place, kind of has its purpose. The fact that, like, 4 of your extra deck slots are eaten up by Utopia the Lightning, a Norden, and a Rafflesia to access, like, these to access main deck cards, and this just to be, like, good outs to cards. Is, like, problematic, but you do have cards like Heartland Draco in here to steal games, and Heartland Draco is also just another reason, like, to advocate not playing multiple Phantasmal Dragons, because even if they were at 8k and you hit them 3 times with this, if you can secure another attack directly with a Heartland Draco, then it's definitely just over. Like, that's literally 8k. Like, you're not playing Upstart in this deck. So, like, unless they're increasing their life with a Forerunner, there's literally no reason why you shouldn't have won that game, essentially. I hate to be as clear-cut as that, because it's definitely not how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works, but, I mean, it's kind of the only real way you can talk about these sort of instances where you're literally trying to cheese your opponent into, like, getting the win. But basically, that's it. That is it for this Deck-O-Doctor. So, let me know what you guys think about the deck list. I will be playing it in another DEVpro Duel video that will be going up either later today or tomorrow. All that sort of nonsense. Like I've already said, if you have your own deck that I haven't done in a long time, that's a TCG legal deck that you want me to potentially Deck Doctor, do one of these little Deck Doctor series on, send it to my Facebook fan page, which there's a link in the description too. But other than that, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. If you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view them is more than sufficient. I cannot express how much it would help me or how much it would be appreciated. But other than that, like I said plenty of times in this video already, all the relevant links that you might want to access, including the Facebook fan page link, in the description of this video. But other than that, that has been all for this Deck Doctor video, and as always, guys, take care.